Welcome back to Wojo's Greenhouse and Garden Center here in Ortonville. I'm George, and we are ready to talk about issues on our shooting of the green team. We're going to start off talking about watering. We've talked about watering in each of our segments. I want to show you a success story. This tree was returned about 2.5 weeks ago with a lot of dried leaves on it. Most of the leaves we've plucked off. An example of what happens if you don't water the tree. And lo and behold, when you start watering it, it refoliates again. So this tree is almost ready to be replanted. We'll probably plant it here on the grounds and have it as an example of what can happen if you care for your plants properly. So I wanted to mention this, and again, watering now is going to be a little bit easier as we get into the fall, and we'll talk about that, but at least now continue with your watering. It's interesting, I got a current issue of Horticulture magazine, came in the mail this week, and they had a section dealing with watering tips for summer heat. And I'm going to go through a few of those. We've talked about them previously, but first of all is adding mulch. Mulch helps to hold the moisture in. It also helps to make the soil cooler, and it is beneficial. Water once and then water twice. Water once to get the soil moist, let it drain, and then water again. And with that, it helps to have the water go deeper into the soil around the plant. Use saucers under container plants to catch the drainage. So if you have a container plant, use a saucer underneath to help catch the overflow. Position potted plants under your hanging baskets. If you're watering a hanging basket and the water drips out, it might just as well drip on another plant down below it. Choose more drought-resistant plants. And again, this is an excellent idea if you're in an area that is very arid, sandy, and in a hot area. There are plants that are more drought tolerant once they get established. Water deep and water less often. Roots will seek out water, and if you water deeply, the roots will go down to that water. If you water a little bit on a regular basis, the roots stay shallow. So you want to water deeper and less frequently, and that way the roots will establish themselves better. Leave clippings on your lawn when you mow. That again helps to hold the moisture into the turf. Mow high. That is healthier for the grass in the summertime. Add organic material. Again, we talk about planting here using compost or another soil conditioner. That is an excellent way of helping to conserve water. And then choose the right plants for your climate. Again, we have a lot of information here and can share information with the guest so that they're picking the plants that are ideal for their location. So that's the topic of watering, and hopefully that we'll continue to have success. We have one of our suppliers, Willoway Nursery out of Ohio, that uses this poster as we move into the fall. Fall is a fantastic time to dig and to plant in your garden. Fall is a great time, and I wanted to share with you some of the reasons for that. Why plant in the fall? Cooler air temperatures mean less stress on the plants and more energy for root establishment. Ground temperatures cool much slower than air temperatures in the fall, allowing for a long season for root establishment. Roots grow as long as the soil temperatures stay above 40 degrees. Ground temperatures take a long time to warm up in the spring, meaning root growth and establishment takes far longer in the spring than in the fall. Natural moisture is more available. Hopefully we'll have Mother Nature giving us more rain, which helps in establishment, and then the fall planting and establishment allows plants to grow in a less stress environment, getting ready for the next spring. So fall is an excellent time for planting. We have 5 trucks coming in this week here at Wojo's to restock and replenish, so we'll be ready when you come in for your landscaping needs. Another thing I wanted to mention is a topic that I've talked to a couple grandparents about and another family. It's important that you bring your children into the garden center. Either your children, grandchildren, the neighbors' kids, nephews, nieces, whatever it is, the young people need to come into the garden center. They need to experience what it is to come to a garden center. They need to learn about plants, and they need to help you in your garden area. I was fortunate growing up. Family had a farm in Clarkston. I spent weekends and summers with my grandmother and uncle so that I learned about plants. Children today don't have that same opportunity. So it's up to us as parents, grandparents, to teach the children what it is to garden and raise vegetables or trees and shrubs and perennials. We had a young couple in this week, very serious, asking me, when you plant, do you take the plant out of the plastic container? They were dead serious. They didn't know how to plant. And I had to explain to them, yes, the roots need to be in contact with the soil, and yes, you do take the plant out of the container. So anytime you can bring a child in to the garden center, it's important. It's a learning opportunity for them. In addition to playing on our play set, it also gives them a chance to experience what it is like at a garden center, and hopefully they can acquire some information. Another topic that continues to show up here with guests is apple scab on crabapple trees or on fruiting apple trees. We've talked about this previously. Apple scab is a fungal issue that will change the fruit and make the fruit not desirable, and it also leaves spots on the leaves. A good way of taking care of this, especially if you're raising apples as a fruit, is to study up and use the orchard spray at different times during the growing season. It's important that you keep the fungicide on the tree so that you minimize the apple scab. The other situation that we have is most of the varieties, and I believe all the varieties of trees that we have here, are more resistant to the scab than others. So by picking varieties that are less susceptible to that, that is important. We talked about the fall webworm a couple weeks ago. Again, I mentioned either the topical insecticide or the systemic insecticide for controlling that. And we've talked about deer in the past. It's always important to protect the trunk of your tree with the trunk guards to ward off the deer or the chemical products. We'll take a break and come back in a moment. we're going to continue this episode of the Green Team talking about a topic that comes up periodically, and it's called magnolia scale. Wind is blowing my papers all over here, so I'm going to have to use my plant as a paperweight. The magnolia scale looks like this on the stem of the magnolia. It's a little bump that occurs, and inside, under that bump, there is an insect that is sucking valuable nutrients out of your magnolia tree. How do you correct this? Again, the Bayer systemic insecticide that you water in around the base of the tree, and then it goes up into the vascular system of the plant, and this will help minimize this. This is something that, if it's not corrected within a period of time, can take the tree down. So with that, the magnolia scale is something to pay particular attention to, and as we've talked about in the past, being observant in your garden, and if you see this kind of a situation on the stems of your magnolias, you know you must take action soon. The fruit update from Michigan State. Some interesting things that are happening. They continue to talk about the drought condition. Most of the area is still underwater for the last couple of months. We had a moist spring. Things were great in May, early June, and then July and August have really depleted the water that we need for our plants to grow. So with that, as again we talked about watering earlier, watering is especially important if you're raising fruit, because the fruit develops with adequate water. The growing degree days are basically in line as for normal for this year. Initially we were a little bit ahead, but now with the cooler weather we've had, it's stabilized. Apples are maturing earlier than predicted by the folks at Michigan State. A brown marinated stink bug is something that they're finding in traps in the orchards, and those need to be contained. For the strawberries, I wasn't aware of this, but if you're developing a new strawberry bed, there is a potato leafhopper that will eat on the foliage of the new planting, so that if you're raising strawberries and are planting new plants, you want to keep an eye out for that. So I've mentioned in the past the importance that if you are serious about raising fruit, that you subscribe to this weekly publication coming out from Michigan State Extension. This is the report that comes out from our extension agent who deals with southeastern Michigan, and it's again filled with information to help you be successful with your fruit growing. This week, Nancy Zerlag in the News Free Press, in the insert, talked about an insect that attacks the tips of boxwoods. There are some varieties of boxwoods that are more susceptible to it. It turns out that the varieties that we sell here at Wojo's, the Green Gem, the Green Velvet, and Green Mountain, are kind of the middle of the road. They're hybrids. They aren't the most susceptible to the particular insect, the boxwood physalid. And what happens here, let me show you a picture. If you find the tips of your boxwoods curling, you want to examine it, and more than likely under that curled portion of the leaf you will see these tiny insects. And it's these insects that you want to take care of with either the Bayer systemic or with a topical spray, but you want to make sure that you get the underside of the leaf, not just spraying the top part, but you want to make sure you get under it to be where the insects are. And again, this is a way of taking care of that insect that affects the tips of boxwoods. This was talked about last week in the Free Press, in their garden section, in their Friday publication, and it's important information to have. Be on the lookout for this. If you see the tips of your boxwood leaves curling, this may be the cause of that. Another thing that came out this week in the Oakland Press, there was a full-page ad that the Oakland County Health Department put out covering, and I've just included just two portions of it, but this is the main cover of it. Know the buzz. The West Nile virus is present in our area. I had a dead sparrow in my garden that I strongly suspect had been subject to the West Nile virus, and you want to be careful as you're going out that you have the spray on to keep the mosquitoes away so that you don't contract that West Nile virus and get sick. So this is information that came out from the health department, a nice colorful picture, and their information here is use insect repellents. The DEET is especially important. Be careful using the repellents on hands of children because the repellents can irritate eyes and mouth. Wear protective clothing such as long sleeve shirts and pants. Avoid areas where mosquitoes are present if possible, and maintain window and door screens to keep mosquitoes out of buildings. And also to minimize standing water in your garden or lawn area where mosquitoes can lay their eggs and the larvae develop, and then you just create more and more mosquitoes. So with that, it's important that we protect ourselves from the West Nile virus. A fun thing I want to talk about and close down this segment is something again that was talked about this weekend in the Detroit News Free Press publication on Friday, and it was fall container planting, fall containers, and what an excellent time of the year to either establish new or liven the containers that you've had throughout the summer. I have an example here of a container that was put together by our folks. And with that, it's a nice combination of decorative kale or cabbage, mums on either side, Wojo gem for an accent, and a nice ornamental grass. With that, this gives you an opportunity, if you are not into do-it-yourself, to purchase one of these, that we have many different combinations that have been put together here, or if you're a do-it-yourselfer, we have the plants, the mums, the kale, different size mums depending upon the size of your container, nice other accents, either the grasses or other annuals that are still looking very nice this time of year that can be used for a fall container. Very attractive and can really liven up a spot. And with that, we're going to wind down this segment and come back for another segment shortly.
Canine Stray Rescue does just that. Rescue stray dogs for new families. But they need your help. Become a volunteer at Canine Stray Rescue League of Michigan. Take dogs for walks, help them socialize with others, and help them get adopted. Fill out an application and help a family add a new member today.
Thank you and welcome back for the final segment of the Green Team. And the topic I'm going to refresh ourselves with is the idea about buying your firewood and burning it where you buy it. We have the issues of the emerald ash borer and other insects that can be transported within wood, and there are quarantine areas. It's important that you use the wood where you buy it. We don't want it moving around the state or out of state because of the potential damage that can be done to our forest and ultimately our ecology and economy if these insects take a greater foothold. We're suffering with the emerald ash borer now, and we talked about the Asian longhorn beetle a week or so ago that we want to keep out of our forests. So again, don't move firewood would be our topic for starting the program. A while back, I talked about a guest that came in, and he had a branch off of a maple tree that had what I describe as the telltale markings of a fungal disease called verticillum wilt. And I'm going to turn this sheet over and show the pattern that you see within the cross section of the stem. The verticillum wilt clogs up the vascular system within the tree, and then the tree itself sends down more blockage to prevent the fungus from going up into the tree, and consequently blocks off the vascular system. And that's what you see here. This circle right here, or the circle within this cross section, is a clue that you have verticillum wilt. It's important that you take care of this. There are, again, ongoing issues, and if it's not corrected, it can lead to death of the tree. So verticillum wilt is something that we talked about, and I wanted to show you that picture of what the cross section looks like so that you would be aware of that. Salt-tolerant plants. Michigan State University Cooperative Extension in Oakland County has put together a flyer for salt-tolerant plants. Those of you that use salt for ice and snow in the wintertime, if you're in a condominium complex where salt is used quite heavily, or if you're near a roadway where salt will rush, or not rush, but be blown up onto your landscape. There are plants that are more resistant to salt damage, and it's important that you pay attention to that so that you don't put plants in an area where there is salt and then have to replace them. So this information again is available through Michigan State. A fun topic that I just researched and got the information. When I shared it with a couple people here, they were already aware of it. But for a novice, I wanted to mention to our guests the idea of what's called the goldenrod allergy myth. When we think of summer allergies, we think of ragweed and we think of other grasses. The goldenrod, a lot of people have the notion that goldenrod is one of those plants that cause allergies in humans. But this turns out to be a misconception. Goldenrod, the pollen on goldenrod is too heavy. It is not airborne. It's too heavy and it can't be blown. It's only used by pollinators for pollination of plants. So the goldenrod, which is important for wildlife, I mentioned this book last week, Bringing Nature Home. In this book, there was a graph that showed that I believe there are 115 different species of butterflies that use goldenrod as a host. So for wildlife in your landscape, the goldenrod is an important plant. Also, we find out that while we think of monarch butterflies and the milkweed as being essential, that on the migration from the northern climate back down to Mexico, the goldenrod is a primary host for the monarch as they make their migration back south. So the goldenrod is non-allergenic for humans and very, very important in landscape. So I wanted to mention that. You don't have to be afraid of goldenrod, and it's important that you would use it. That was fun information that like I say, I wanted to share to alleviate that misconception. Warren Buffett is noted as being an economist, but also came up with an interesting quote. Someone is sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. There is no better time than now to plant a tree. Trees need to be established excuse me, in your landscape so that you can enjoy the shade. Your children, grandchildren can enjoy the shade, and now is a perfect time to plant a tree. I thought an interesting quote here, and one that we can help take care of here with all the trees we have here at Wojo's. Another piece of information that was interesting, those people that start seeds, and maybe some folks are already aware of it, but my friend Linda bought a plant at the farmer's market in Clarkston, and the plants were in eggshells. And this particular clipping talks about starting your seeds in eggshells and plant them directly in the garden when ready. The shells will biodegrade and provide the soil with calcium. So it provides a nice area for the plant to get started, and then you don't have to worry about taking it out of a pot or container. You simply plant the eggshell and the plant gets a nice start. So again, an interesting piece of information. Some of you may already be doing this, but something to think about. Also, it's easy when you have the egg tray with 12 or 18 or 24 little holes in it for the eggs. You can use that as a tray to hold your plants as they're growing. So kind of a neat idea. Each year I attend a conference over in Grand Rapids. It is put on by Michigan State and their program called Smart Gardening. This is a program that I want you to do some research on. They have a whole host of publications, different topics, to help you with your gardening needs and information. So I would suggest that you take a look at the Smart Gardening Michigan State Extension to give you some great additional information about tips and ideas. One of the next segments we're going to talk about fall cleanup and winter prep, and that comes the next time. We'll see you soon.